All right. There it is. What's going on, guys? It is Madman Plant, and we are back in the Grow Podcast Studio. It's been a very fun time. We were in California. During that time, we were judging the American Autoflower Cup. We were speaking, doing a mental health panel, and not only that, but having our full podcast set up where we did lives the entire time the American Autoflower Cup was going on. Through there, we've been doing a lot more behind the scenes as far as getting more things together. We're traveling here up in June. We got the Home Growers Championship coming up, which is going to be really, really exciting. And we're going to be doing the exact same thing, but the only difference this time is I will actually be teaching a deepwater culture class, which will be pretty awesome. I'm going ahead to make sure that we are live here on Instagram or even YouTube. Let's see here. Tonight's guest is JM Balbuena, and she was at our panelist, and she has an incredible story. And go ahead and introduce her real quick through her. Give me 1 second. I'll put this all together. Swear, I need somebody like behind the scenes that has got me. All right, good. Just wanted to make sure that we were actually on YouTube. Because sometimes I've done this where I wasn't live and I thought it was live. So, you gotta always make sure. So, just a second here. So tonight we're joined by someone whose story spans continents and communities. J.M. Balbuena is a Navy veteran, entrepreneur, author, and advocate whose healing journey began after a traumatic brain injury on an aircraft carrier, leaving her with PTSD, depression, and insomnia. Cannabis gave her life back, and she's now using her platform to educate, fight for patients' rights, and tell the stories that change the way that we see this plant. So, welcome to the show, JM. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, thanks so much for being on. The one thing that I really love um, with this is speaking to women, especially in cannabis, because you get so dominated by the male market, and there's just so many women who are in cannabis doing just as good or even better, and it's great to be able to talk to both sides, especially when it comes down to mental
hmm
health and everything, because there's a difference that I believe that's in everybody, and that's how we're all different and individualized. So I really appreciate
Right.
you being here. Tell me a little bit about the American Autoflower Cup for those that hadn't been. What did you think?
I loved it. It was awesome. I'm thankful that I connected with you about being on the panel, and being present there. I love seeing the recognition, I guess, that Autoflower is getting, in a sense, having their own cup happening because, there's people that focused on that department, and it's a sector of the space that I'd like to see. I had never been to. I think that was the third one, right? And I hadn't been to it, so it was a cool experience.
Yeah, that was the third annual, and it was really
Right.
special. I thought, what's really cool about the American Autoflower Cup is they were in full support of the mental health panel and really helped me
Mm-hmm.
kind of set the stage for everything that we were able to do. And I really appreciate that because just like equity, and it always brings me back to Free My Weed Man when
Right.
Crystal told me that it's great that we're all here celebrating the plant, getting awards and everything, but we still got to pay homage and recognition to those whose lives have been, currently, or will be destroyed by this plant. And the fact that, you know, getting the voice out there,
What?
getting people that are
Mhm.
nonviolent crimes out of jail for cannabis is just so huge.
Agree.
And that's why when we're all there, yeah, it's great to have a good time, but it's also even better to underline the bigger facts: mental health, equality, equity, business, services, all the different things that really make up this in 2030, which I think is going to be like a 58 million or billion-dollar industry. Just it's
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
astronomical.
Yeah, and all those things that you mentioned pretty much make up the tapestry of the space. So that's really cool. Was this your first time doing the mental health panel?
Um, so
Or
last
you've
year
done it?
we were there, but we just did the podcast, and we did talk a
Got it.
lot about mental health back last year, and that was in January when the cup was. No, wait, is it in January? I think it was. I think it was in January. It was cold last year. This year was great because it was warm,
Felt like
and
summer.
it did feel like summer. I also, when I took
Yeah.
off from the airport, I realized I didn't know how close I was to the beach this entire time. I was like, "Damn, I should have gone." But you get tied up. I mean, they keep us
Right.
busy. Plus, they were moving us around. We went out to eat, so it was a lot of fun.
How
And they're
long were you
doing
in California?
so they flew us out on the 7th, and we left on the
Mm,
11th.
got it.
Yeah, and what's really cool about being a judge is they provide a guest house. They, provide pretty much all the amenities and entertainment, and you're there to just do your job and,
Hmm.
have some fun. And one thing I really appreciated was how many people I met that really know more than I do, and the value of the fact that, I learned so much from just being there. Even from my
Right.
little doodad where I put the material in here, and what this does is it instantly cleans the glass, so you don't have to keep using
Hmm.
Q-tips. You can just keep soaking it, and every time you pull it out, it's crystal clean. Be-
Clean.
yeah, because of the heat and the
That's
alcohol, it
good.
separates the residue and just like dissolves it.
Hmm. I
So,
love that.
all right. Well, before we get into it, tonight we're going to be talking about a couple of different things actually. So we're going to be talking about your service in the Navy, your traumatic brain injury, PTSD. We're going to tease on deeper topics that will discuss about overcoming trauma, dealing with loss, and advocating for others. And then we're also going to talk about Ryan's Law Foundation and as an advocate for compassionate cannabis access. And then also the transition into the first segment, which is the personal trauma and mental health, which I think is really great that you're a part of, especially the access part. Because a problem here in Virginia is you can grow or you can get a medical card and go to a dispensary. So for those
Hmm.
people that don't have a medical card or don't grow, where do they find their cannabis? And providing access
Right.
to those that are in need is so important. It's just like your medicine. If people were asthmatic and they
Absolutely.
had needed inhalers, we need to help them get inhalers. So it's going to be a fun-filled night. So I'm really excited. I'm gonna go wreck
Same.
myself real quick here on a dab. Are you gonna be smoking with me tonight, or are you just gonna be chilling?
Cheers. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Okay, what do we got? What is
This
that?
is the strain is Sherb and Runt, and it's from
Okay.
my vape brand, Interesting Vapes.
Speaking of which, just tell people a quick bio because we will be going into your dispensary and everything. A little bit about
Okay.
your brand and dispensary and everything. Go for it.
Yeah, so Jack's Cannabis is located in Ramona. We've been operational since 2017, servicing the county of San Diego. So super excited to talk about that and what that entails. Um, I've I also own a production company, Expression Studios, and there I focus on making content that is um, unbiased about the cannabis space and psychedelic space. Most recently, which just this past weekend, actually, the day that after I saw you, I found out that we were nominated for the San Diego film awards for my documentary Roll Up for Equity, which is about the struggle that the city of San Diego has had to implement social equity within their legal framework in the cannabis space. And so, super excited about that upcoming award show. It's happening on June 29th. So, if anybody's local to San Diego, they can participate in that. It's going to be uh, live, but it's also going to be showcased through KPBS, which in my opinion, I'm like, that's a little bit of a big deal. So I'm excited about that happening. And then obviously what you mentioned, Ryan's Law, I serve there as an executive director, and through Ryan's Law, we made sure that California legalized patients that are terminally ill and in palliative care to have access to non-smokable cannabis in hospitals. But yeah, so that's a little bit about me and what I've been doing. I've been in the space for 10 years. I've written a couple of books. One is called The Successful Cannabis, and another one is my latest one is Green Renaissance, which it's a historical recount of the impact that the plant has had in wellness, lifestyle, and culture. That's it.
Did anybody tell you that you're amazing?
Ah, thank you.
It's like, you got a
Appreciate it.
resume better than the what is it, the most interesting guy, from Dasaki or Dasaki, the
I don't know
commercials.
about that.
She's like, if you met
I don't know
her,
what you're
you could
talking
add that to your resume. All
about.
right. Well, that is awesome.
No,
And that's what I
I stay
love.
busy.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I stay busy. That's all.
Yeah, you do. And I think that's the thing, mind, body, and spirit. And that's one thing that I've
Hmm.
learned, especially in times where I don't feel up to par and I don't feel great, is the longevity and the ability to keep moving, and that kind of separates you from getting stuck. Kind of like with
Right.
rust. After a while, it almost welds itself together. And the ability to keep
Hmm.
moving, keep going. So, let's just jump into it. All right. So,
Do it.
I want to talk about the military first. We have a
Okay.
lot of military vets. My good friend GI Genetics, he's in here. He was Army. He also suffers from
Hi.
PTSD
What's
as
up,
well.
brother?
Yep. Um,
Yes.
talk a little bit about one. What did you do in the military, and what was life like for you?
Yeah, so in the military, I was an aviation electronics technician for a fighter jet squadron, VFA 41. And so I worked on the electronic components of airplanes, F-18s, to be specific.
And then through there, um, what would you say kind of led on to like the mental health? Was it always there, like that you were dealing with, like through boot camp going forward, or how was life evolving for you at that time as a person?
I mean, we all have our traumas, our childhood traumas that we had, as I mentioned to you when we had our conversation during the American Auto Cup, Auto Flower, pardon me, Cup. Um, I lost my father to suicide when I was 16, so there were some mental health components to and I did go to therapy as a kid, for that, and that definitely helped. So, I think my issues that started, I guess, getting in the way of like my everyday functionality life, I guess, they did happen after the accident, unfortunately. But that's when, in mind you, I didn't even think about mental health or anything like that until I was out of the military, like towards my last year, because that happened during my first deployment. And we got back to after the deployment, and I was in physical therapy for 6 months, and we went back on deployment. And there I still, was doing like minimal, like kind of like the therapy that was some of the exercises that I was told to do and things like that. So I continue to do that. And then after the second deployment, um, that's when I did another 8 months of physical therapy when I got back to the United States. And then I decided that I wanted to get out once my contract was up.
Do you ever have a point where you miss the military?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, to be honest with you, you meet so many people from so many walks of life. And I kind of, as a multicultural person myself, I enjoyed that. Like, I met people from almost every single state. Like, people that, let's say, if I hadn't met anybody from Montana being from Jersey until I joined the Navy. And it was cool, to talk to ask questions about being curious and asking people like where how is it where they're from, um, before the military. I think I had only been up and down the East Coast. I had never ventured like past Ohio. And so it was, I miss those things. While in the Navy, I deployed on an aircraft carrier twice. So I stopped at many different countries, and so I miss those days. I thought they were pretty cool, and I miss the camaraderie. When you're in the military, you're always with somebody. I think one of the things that a lot of people don't take into consideration about like the transition from military to civilian is how you go from always being with somebody, like whenever you go somewhere, we have like the buddy system. You work with groups of people, and then you kind of come into the civilian world, and it's everybody pretty much keeps to themselves, and so it's not a requirement, to have a buddy or and things like that. So um, as a veteran, and you couple that with, and I'm sure your friend that's military, there in the room, he can attest to this, that you also, your life, you have everything that you do. For instance, you as a civilian, like set up your own appointments to go like see your yearly physical, your eye exam, or your dental work. When you're in the military, it's like already a part of the system. So like you wake up one day and somebody's like, "Hey, you have a physical today," or you have to go get your dental work today. So you come into the civilian life, and now that's no longer there. And that's especially like let's say somebody. I did 4 years active duty, so in 4 years I got adjusted to that life. I can only imagine somebody that does 20 years and it's in that system, and then they come out, and now you have to now adjust. And I think that adjustment you know, can potentially have a negative impact in how you navigate through it. Because, when you just being used to that, and those kinds of things can affect somebody. So,
GI is commenting in here, and he said, "Get your benefits. You earn them." He said that is the number one reason of what vets miss the camaraderie. And he said,
mhm.
"LOL, DFAS, you're red for dental," or
Right.
says that you're red for dental. So only you're gonna understand that because I was in the military. So okay, so let's talk a little bit about the accident. So it actually
Mhm.
seems like and I've watched a couple. I was never in the military. I was in the service, pest control, and we did kill a lot of
Mhm.
bugs. Yep, see a lot of Americans from bugs. I'm just kidding. But I watched several documentaries on aircraft carrier life, and you have what, like 3,000 people or something like that on board, like
Like
there-
five,
like
at
5,000
least.
people. And like you
Hmm.
said, there's someone always around because you're on a boat.
It's like a floating island, they call it.
So with that being said, when did things besides the accident start to go like bad? I mean, and what was the accident?
So the accident, I was walking behind a jet when it went up on power, and it pretty much that jet blast blew me over. Fortunately for me, I had so that particular plane, I was going to service it, and I had six chains on me, and they were each 10 pounds each. So me carrying that and walk behind it,
Mm.
literally, fortunate. I say fortunately that I was fortunate that I had that extra 60 pounds on me, because I can only imagine. But and not that it made that much of a difference because I still, got blown away. But um, I, I like to think that it may have prevented me from going all the way out into the water. I just landed from the arm D-arm area to the um, to the landing where they were going to land. Other planes that were coming. So I got hit. I pretty much my cranial cracked in half in the forehead area. Um, Fortunately for me, there were no like burn uh, injuries or anything like that. It was mostly like physical pain. I had my full gear, so nothing as far as like bleeding. I didn't break anything, fortunately. The impact was mostly on my head, and then I had a lot of back pain. Um, it- Once, like the accident, once they retrieved me from the area and everything, um, the one issue that I had was like, so I'm from the Dominican Republic, so my first language is Spanish. Like the English language was gone from my brain for like a good 30 minutes. I couldn't speak, I could understand it, but I couldn't speak English.
Wow.
So I couldn't like respond in English. So that was probably the most unnerving situation because I'm like, I want to talk and I'm like, I know how to say things, but that part of my brain, I don't know, it kind of like turned off or something. And eventually it came back like slowly, but um, besides the pain, that was probably the most unnerving part of it. But the mental health situation came from now, like once that accident happened, from there, that's when I started experiencing the not being able to sleep. So I would go to like I wouldn't be able to. I would go to sleep, shower after work because when you're deployed, you do 12 hours on and 12 off. So once I was done with my job, I would go shower and then go to sleep and just be up, you know, completely not wired, but just not sleeping at all. So I would go back to work, and at some point, my supervisor was like, "Why are you working like 16-hour days? What's wrong with you?" And then that's when I was like, "Well, I'm not falling asleep, so I'd rather come here and do something." And then he's like, "No, we need to get that checked," because he was aware of the accident. Uh, because from there went to medical, and it was all downhill from there. They had me on some highly addictive sleeping medication that I didn't want to take it because, when they start you off, or we're going to give you this, but we can't give it to you for more than 3 weeks straight because we have to stop it because of the potential like addiction affinity to taking it. Um, that's when I was like, wait a minute, so I'm not sleeping. Now I have concerns about these pills that I'm taking. And it just became a whirlwind. I've never been like a pill popper type of person, even like Tylenol and things like that. I'm not necessarily a person that likes to take those things. So I think too, not the unknown of not knowing, like, um, am I ever gonna get healed? Like what? Because the medical personnel, they took me from NyQuil to Benadryl to um, I forget the name of like the danger. I couldn't even pronounce it. It starts with like benzo something. I forget what it's called.
Oh,
But and I have a couple of bottles because I didn't finish them, and I was very reluctant to take them. But if you can ask most veterans and or even active duty military, from all the pills that they give you, whenever there's something wrong, I think we all keep like a little collection of all the um, of all the big pharma things that they give us. But the issue, going back to, I say all of that to say that the main issue started from the lack, like the extended periods of not being able to get a full night's rest, because I was getting either not falling asleep or waking up like every single hour on the hour, almost like every hour to 45 minutes I was up, like eyes open and not being able to fall back asleep for like another 45 minutes or something like that. So with that, I was super tense. I was like highly irritable, and that's one of the reasons to why I decided to get out, just because I was just not okay. And then, you know, I came across cannabis shortly after I got out, and it just changed the game for me.
yeah, it seems to do that for a lot of people, and that's one thing that I love about it. Now, how did this affect your like mental health? Like, obviously, you had the brain injury, and you had that time where for a minute you couldn't understand English, but like in the military, what do you do when you have a bad day and you're on a boat? Or what do you do if you, like a normal person who'd like to say, I'm going to sit on my bed all day and cry? You can't do that because you have to work for 12
Yeah.
hours. Like, how do you do that? And then, second of all, um, like, what thoughts, like, what specific situations are you thinking about that you're going? And GI said it's cyclobenzoprene or
There you go.
benzoprine.
Yep.
Because I'd love to learn a little bit more about, you know, how you hit rock bottom. But, like for instance, give an example of myself. So, like, recently, I've had some hardships in my life that are outside of the, Madman plant, ecosystem. And, sometimes it will invoke different thoughts of, like, imposter syndrome, where you don't think you're good enough, or,
Hmm.
you start to doubt yourself, or you start to think things that maybe aren't necessarily true, or, you start you going even deeper. And I mean, there's been obviously times where you think, man, I should just like get out of here, like in a literal sense. And it can go in a very deep, dark path. So when you talk about all of that and then your brain injury, like what is going on inside the mind? Like what is giving you a bad time, I guess.
Well, when you're deployed, for instance, you really don't have that much time to think about that.
Okay.
So now when I was just wide awake and I'm thinking like, what the fuck, essentially. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to curse, but you know what I'm saying? Like I'm just
Curse
laying there
away.
and I'm tossing. Oh, perfect, because I'm a sailor and that's what we do. But I was just saying, like, thinking back with that. I'm tossing and turning, and I need to do something about it. So in my mind is like, let me go work so I can get tired to death, then come back, fall asleep, hopefully at least get 4 solid hours. But I wasn't even getting that. I was fall asleep for an hour, wake up, fall asleep for an hour, or, fall back, be up for about 45 minutes or something like that, then fall asleep again. Now it's time to wake up. That's super dangerous, especially like working on the flight deck where you need to have all your senses, because it can cost a life, your own or somebody else's. Um, so, that is the reason why my supervisor was like, excuse me, like, you can't do that, was because of that, because I'm putting myself in danger and obviously putting other people in danger. But what I was going to say is when you're deployed, you are thinking about a couple of things. There's nothing else to do, like you said. Then when somebody's down, then now that this disturbs everybody else too, because when you're deployed, there's limited amount of people, to do certain things, and now you're split in shifts. And so when somebody is not they're at their full potential, then now you have kind of like a weak link. And so me being like I want to say a perfectionist, or somebody that, as you were going over my resume, I am a doer. I like to do things. And so, that was messing with my head. The fact that now I'm deployed and I feel like I'm a burden to the command, or my shop. Like those things definitely put you in a space that you might be telling yourself things that aren't true, or even like I was doing, which was stupid, like putting yourself in harm's way by overcompensating. So, and that alone would wear you out, both mentally and physically. So yeah.
Do you think that you ever feel conflicted about using cannabis as a medicine, considering the Navy background and just the stigma around it from other sailors and other people in like the DoD? No, I'm sure not everybody is like, "Oh wow, that's cool that you're into cannabis." Like, um,
Well, you definitely have to battle the stigma no matter where you go, whether it's from government, bodies, or even your own families and things like that. But when I got out of the military, one of my friends, a veteran, he heard, I was telling him what was going on with the sleeping situation and the medicines that I was on. And he's like, "Oh, if it's sleeping, you should probably just try cannabis." And like you said, I was like, no, I don't do drugs. Like, I don't know if I should. And they already have me on this. I don't know if I should be doing this and that. And he was like, girl, this is not a drug, it's a plant. And so, I never even thought of cannabis from that point of view. And that alone, kind of uh, was like, all right, well, yeah, you're right. It is a plant kind of thing. And so I did try it. And that night, for the first time since the accident, I actually slept like a solid 6 hours. And so that alone, I think it just rewired my entire system, because then I questioned everything about it. Everything I knew in my mind is like, okay, I actually slept. I feel okay. I don't feel like the need to now, oh my gosh, I need to, like a crackhead. I didn't feel like a crackhead,
yeah,
like now it's highly addicted or anything like that. Or now let me
yeah, it's
do
not
it's a
crack.
gateway drug. So now I want to do heroin. Like none of that happened. I just literally slept like a baby, and even that night before actually felt okay. I remember that night, the first time that I consumed post accident, post military. I actually was laughing from like the stomach, from like the pit of my stomach. If things were funny and I didn't feel tense, then I go to sleep. I sleep like a baby. And that was it for me. It changed everything. I decided to do my own research, which was the smartest thing that I could ever do, and realized I didn't even know that. I lived in a state where cannabis was legal. Like that wasn't like a thing in my radar. And so it changed everything. And from there, I decided, once I went to the dispensary for the first time, a legal dispensary that it was super sketch, but I'm not going to lie. It's Prop 215 time in California, definitely the Wild Wild West. However, I'm looking at the amount of people coming and going. People waiting in line to get their medical card, or not their medical card, but to like sign up to be like a medical patient of the location or whatever. And then you have people coming in and out. And just like I come from an entrepreneurial family, seeing that, I was like, wait, this is actually a good business. It helps me, so I'm sure it's helping all these people. Um, and shortly after that, I met the person who would be my business partner to this day. I want to say about 2 months after that epiphany.
That's awesome. It's always funny how you do that. Jay, our sponsor, Dry Flower, he met his business partner through yoga. You know what I mean?
Nice.
So, yeah, our investors.
Mhm.
So it's one of those things where when you follow your heart, it kind of all the pieces kind of fall into place. Now, talk a little bit about the dark places that you would visit during your depression and during all of this. Like, with your father committing suicide and stuff like that, obviously, the extreme route that you could have take.
Right.
Um, Talk a little bit about that mindset. And is this all taking
Well,
place on an aircraft carrier, or is this after? Like, how is this going on, or is this?
it's happening all throughout.
Okay,
Now, the I want to say the boogeyman in the room is that me thinking like, am I gonna be just like my dad? Like, am I? Because that's where I was at. Like, in my mind, I'm like, I don't want to live like this. If this is gonna be the rest of my life, I don't want it, kind of thing.
mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to tell like my family that the accident happened because I couldn't even talk about it that much. I came back from deployment. I went home, and so I went home, and being home is when I found out. Now, mind you, I just got back from deployment. I was gone for 8 months. I come back, and I'm home with my family after all of that happened. And I get a text from my LPO, my supervisor, and he says that, hey, we're going back on deployment in 6 months. I freaked out. And I didn't even tell my family. I just had a little like freak out episode, and my mom was just, she didn't know how to deal with it, and my sister. So they were like, let's just go to the beach in Jersey. We went to the Jersey Shore, and and I remember that I was supposed to go home on that day when I got the text, and I didn't get on the plane. I did not get on the plane. Um, and my mom and my sister are like, well, didn't you leave today? And I'm like, no, I don't. And so I didn't go back for a week. My LPO and people from my command were calling me.
Oh
I
shit.
was getting calls, texts, and I didn't answer to nobody. A week after that, my mom's like, so when are you going back? I thought you were only here for 2 weeks. I was like, no, it's actually three. Or in any case, I never even spoke to my family about the accident or anything like that. Because I know, knowing my mother, she probably would have kidnapped me to the Dominican Republic and not let me come back. So I also had like that pressure of like my overprotective mother not, getting her overwhelmed while I'm already on the other side of the country and then deployed to the other side of the world. Like, I was trying to make sure that was okay, make sure I was okay. But regardless, I went back to work and then started my physical therapy and some mental health therapy as well that they provided. And just, talking about it, but I still wasn't sleeping. I still had the nightmares. I still had, waking up the hour that I slept in cold sweats because the PTSD came in the form of like having dreams, dreaming about the accident recurrently. like all the time. And so that's when I voiced that to some of my peers, that's when they were like, yeah, you definitely need to see a therapist. Um, but the mission comes first when you're in the military. So we deployed and went back on deployment. I went back on the flight deck. I conquered that situation. But once I did that second deployment, I knew that I didn't want to do another one. So,
Now, during your dreams, tell me like one of your dreams, if you can, or do you remember any of them?
so yeah, I mean, it was a reliving the accident.
Mm-hmm.
So, in many different ways, I was always on the flight deck. There was, and what the whole being blown, and then
Yeah,
having dreams of things that didn't even happen, like landing in water or um, more planes coming towards me and things,
or
those
like
kinds of
getting run
things. Just like,
over.
yeah, well, not getting run over, but that it happened, but that it was about to happen, like those types of things. So literally just dreaming about being on the flight deck and horrible things happening.
Now,
Even if it's things that wouldn't happen on the on an aircraft carrier, like getting an eagle, like take you away, like, but from the from the flight deck, like those types of things, like, um, and it took a lot of therapy. It took a lot of, I want to say, there was one therapy session where I probably cried the whole time. And that's probably the one when I left that therapy session is when I felt like weight fell off I felt like lighter. I don't know if maybe
nice.
that's what I really needed to do. Because honestly, the accident happened and I did not cry. I was in pain like a motherfucker. But they picked me up and I was just more disoriented, and then once I couldn't speak English, that was just like a hysteria almost a little bit, but just like tense, not necessarily that I was going crazy, but I'm like trying to find the words and like staring at things like really hard to say what it was, and not being able um, to say it in anything but Spanish. That you can imagine how frustrating that was. Um, but cannabis itself, once I did it that night and I felt okay, I slept okay. I remember thinking the next day, like, bitch, you need therapy. And in that moment, that's when I was like, I took it serious. Like, I need therapy. I need therapy because I want to feel like I felt when I smoked, even when I don't smoke, or at least some type of sense of normalcy, like it felt in those couple of hours where I smoked with my other friend. So, and I think I told you this before. Like I joined the Navy on 2000 on 4/20 2010. That's when I reported to boot camp.
And you didn't even smoke the day of.
No, no, I did think it was funny because I knew about 4/20, but I just I wasn't like a stoner or anything like that. Or I smoked weed a few times during college at parties, not like anything crazy. So.
Now, talk about being in the military often means putting on a strong front. Did you ever feel trapped by the expectation to be tough and resilient while you're going through all this and therapy?
Absolutely. One of the main things, especially being a woman, because you already know there's not that many of us. The ratio from women to men, um, particularly when I was in the military, I think it's getting closer now. But in 2010, between 2010 and 2014, we were maybe 12 people in the shop and only three were girls. So, you get one girl now is down, and somebody like me that was like productive, like then now you see less girls, and now you usually the saying is, that women don't do as much, and so even that was fucking with me because I was I'm just an overachiever, and so being kind of like feeling like I was being held by all these different things, held back, it was also like making me angry. That's why I was like highly irritable, and not the person that I truly am. And in that pressure of performance, or like I said, being the weakest link, um, is not cool at all. It definitely fucks with your head and puts you in places like mentally where you start saying things to yourself that are not nice, for lack of a better term.
Oh, I'm very familiar with that. I'm actually not the best person to myself. Like you, kind of. No, don't get me wrong. Do have a very lazy side to me that is underneath all of this. Okay, so I'm
We
not
all
out
do. We
here
all
like a little
do.
Energizer bunny. But I will say though, like you, I'm an overachiever, and if I'm going to do something, I want to put my heart into it. I want to feel something at the
Right.
end of the day. And that can be definitely frustrating because you take the same energy that you put into something to the same energy to talk shit to yourself, and I do
Right.
that a lot.
Right.
And there's times where
Right.
Lacey's like, "Stop talking. I'm not gonna let you speak to yourself like this. You need to
Hmm.
stop." You know what I mean? Um, and it's one of those things where
Yeah, marijuana does that for me. Like whenever I'm having those conversations, yeah, I need to smoke.
smoke.
Smoke my
What
little
are we
joint,
doing? This is
and we good.
SmokeBusters, where we break the stigma. You have to
Yeah.
smoke. There we go.
I'm just saying, like, whenever I'm having those conversations in my head, the main thing is get a little Mary Jane in your system and literally, exact. Ooh, what do you got there?
This is all my Mississippi hippie by Loving in
Mm,
Her Eyes that I just harvested not too long ago.
nice.
Oh, yeah. Really, really nice.
What's the terpene profile from that one?
I'm going to have to look that up.
Mm,
Let's see here. It was given to me as a clone. So,
mm-hmm.
let's see here. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. All right, let's see here. Yes, I am over 21 years old. We got the lineage is indigo crossed with Cajun moon. Its scent is
Mm,
savory, earthly, and chocolate because it is kind of like a purple, dark color. Kind of nice.
hmm.
When we washed it last time, it came out as straight purple. It was crazy. Let's see
Nice.
here. That's all it says on the website. Boom, boom. But yep, so that's what I'm smoking on.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
This vape,
What's that?
Sherb and Runts. That's the strain I'm smoking on here. Hybrid.
Now, did you bring that from your dispensary?
No, this is not in stores just yet. I'm actually
Nice.
working directly with the brand to see where we can place it besides here in California. So this is a specialty extraction is done. It's solventless extraction, um, that creates just like a great smokability for the vape. Super smooth. That's why we call it ultra smooth vapes. And hopefully we get this in stores by the end of the summer. That's the plan. So,
That is awesome. I bet that's one of the fun parts about being a dispensary is you get to pre-taste and sample everything, which
mhm.
I think is great for you because it shows that you care about what's on your shelves. I mean, sometimes you go to these dispensaries and you're like, "You guys even have a license?" Like
Ah,
where am I?
no, we have to in California.
Yeah,
But I know what you mean. I know what you mean. But no, we definitely we like to get our employees to test um the samples that we get, so like that they can guide the customer like the right way, you know. And so a lot of the times, and that's a great thing. I think a lot of the brands here in California, they have great programs to get the budtenders educated about the brand. And so whatever brands have the best program, which is a support system, because a lot of the times, you know, um, you have to create the market if it's a brand, if it's a brand that it's new. And so the better educated the bartenders are, the better they can provide information to the consumer. And so
No, I think that's great,
that's
and that's part of you being an overachiever. Because sometimes I go into dispensaries, and I'm like, all right, so what's your best stuff? And they're like, oh, like this stuff is really good. And I'm like, well, what is it? And they're like, I don't know. Hold on, let me get Robert. Robert, you know, it's like, what do you mean? Like you work here, dog. You're behind the fucking counter. Like
Mhm.
sometimes I feel like people, and I used to be one of them, love weed enough that they know nothing about it other than the fact that they smoke it. And it's just like
Smoke it,
you
yeah.
might want to know just a little bit more. As a grower, you know, we're always like, oh, well, who grew it and what strains it from and blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
You know, it's
Hmm.
like a commonality to just dive into like the little Q&A every time somebody brings up a
Right.
flavor. You know, I went to the National Cannabis Festival and I was like, I was like, I was like, oh, is your stuff good? And they're like, yeah. I was like, where did you guys get it from? They're like, oh, that booth. So I went over to that booth and I was like, hey, they said that your stuff's really good. I just wanted to see what it looked like. Where'd you guys get it from? Oh, we got it from Cali. And it's like, okay, well, can you tell me about the strain or the name? Man, I don't really know. We just got it from a farm out there. And it's like,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Like,
Oh,
yes, this
yeah,
is
yeah.
exactly why I want to buy weed from you.
Right. That's crazy that that happens still. But you know, a lot of people, it's just a job for them, you know, and they might not take it as seriously or as, you know, people that actually care about the plant itself and what it can do um, for people
I
and
honestly
why, you
think
know.
that
So,
when you're in the industry, whether you're a grower, dispensary owner, when you're more adapted into the actual like culture and the business, you start to see a lot different in possibilities. I
right.
think from the outside looking in, it's a foreign language. Or what do you mean I'm supposed to be able to make a business out of this that's not selling weed or doing things on the gray or black market? Which hey, it regulates and equalizes everything. So I'm not for or against it. I don't really know much about it, but it's just one of those things where I think the more educated we get, the more resourceful we get, the more stories and lives that we get that are like, yes, this works,
Hmm.
and yes, I did this, and I'm better. I
Of
ultimately
course.
think is the ultimate way we're going to change the minds. It's not going to be because of how great the weed is or all of its benefits. It's somebody's
Right.
friend is dying and they saw that cannabis change their outlook, and now they're a full believer. Because I used to be against weed back in the day, so
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, I've never necessarily be against it. But I was just never into like recreational drugs myself. I never met anybody that did just weed that I thought they had an issue. I can't say I never met anyone that I knew was a weed smoker that something was wrong with them. I mean, I would say like in high school, you had the kids that smoked weed that they played football. You know, they were in sports. Some of them were super smart, and so I never necessarily, you know, I did have the narrative that everybody had, you know, when you went to school. But as far as like witnessing people getting into, let's say, other drugs because of weed or anything like that, I never thought that to be true in real life. But obviously, the indoctrination definitely was planted, but in my head. But My friends that smoked weed were smart as hell, like super smart, taking college classes outside of the high school. So I never believed that it would make you dumb because those people weren't dumb. So,
Yeah, no, I give you that. Now, when I was younger, I actually wanted to be in the police department, and I actually failed my police
mm,
test by 2 points. And it's mainly because I just don't know the Constitution, like verbatim. I don't think
hmm
most people do who are applying
do
for
you
the.
have to know it to be a cop? The
Well, no, there's specific questions on the written part that go through like Constitution stuff. So if you didn't study that part, you may not know it.
Constitution?
you know, there was
I
a
feel that.
handbook that I should have read maybe, but oh well, you know. So when that didn't work out, I actually was working at Domino's, and I knew a worker there that was selling weed, and I was like, hey, I want to buy some weed, and he's like, nope. And I was like, no. I was like, I'm serious. He's like, no, you want to be a cop. He's like, I'm not messing with you. And I was like, well, I was like, I failed my exam. So they said I couldn't
Oh.
do it. And then so he's like, all right, fuck it, whatever. I don't give a shit. And he
Yeah.
did. And then I started smoking, and then I got paranoid as fuck where I couldn't even sit down or have a
Mm.
conversation. I had to sleep it off. And then I was like, well, if all my friends can do it, then what the fuck's wrong with me? You know what I mean? So I just started smoking it, and now there's not a time when I'm not smoking it, you know? Well, I also, at
I feel
23 years old, quit smoking cigarettes and switched to weed because
you.
I was like, whoa, I could just get high and smoke versus, smoke and not get anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I transferred, and that was my way from leaving cigarettes. And yeah, I never think it's been. I'm 36 now. Well, that's when I was 23. So since then, I haven't even thought about a cigarette.
Mm-hmm. You know, one thing you mentioned way earlier that you said, so what do you do when you're in the military and now you have things in your mind and things like that? The other thing is you smoke cigarettes, you drink alcohol. Like,
You
yeah, that is
get into
pretty much the
fights, get court-martialed,
Fortunately,
have to
I
stay in on
didn't
the
go that far.
weekend.
But yeah, so that's pretty much the other thing. I definitely was smoking a lot of cigarettes, uh, and drinking. So,
Well, I mean, I take it, just as an outsider looking in, because like I said, I was never in the military, but it doesn't seem like you have much control. Everything's scheduled, and everybody takes it very, very seriously. So, your ability to go in
to
there and
an
be like, "What's up,
extent, there's a lot of goofing
motherfuckers?"
around
Probably
too.
isn't that rare.
No, no, no. There's a lot of goofing around too.
Oh,
Like
there is. Okay.
you just take it very serious, like when you're working, like you're doing your job and things like that. Like on the flight deck, you can't do too much playing around. You have to in order to be sane, to keep your sanity. But as far as when that jet is on, we all have a job to do, and you know what I'm saying. So if somebody that drops the ball, then it just creates that domino effect.
It's
But
like, Jimmy, when you were messing with me, I totally forgot to put the joystick in the plane. What do you mean?
right, exactly. Yeah, but no, I didn't mean to like take the conversation back, but
No,
that's
go
the
for
other
it.
thing,
It's an open
where
conversation.
yeah. So, but when you asked like, what do people do? Yeah, we smoke a lot in the military. Like when you're on the aircraft carrier, you're not supposed to have anything else, at least in public, but like the only thing that they would allow you to do is cigarettes. You're not supposed to drink unless they give it to you, because they do. When we in the Navy, if we go, I think it's like more than 45 days without getting to land, then they give everyone a beer.
One beer.
Oh, one beer.
Well,
Yeah, I mean one
45
beer,
beers per person,
one or
just in
two,
case.
huh? Yeah,
45 beers per person, just in case.
I guess no, we will never be out to sea that long. People would jump off for sure, but. Um, people cannot trust me. That's why, because at 45, like people are getting tense. Like 45 days haven't without seeing land, it starts getting weird for people for sure.
Oh, I can
So
just
they give you
imagine.
that beard to take the edge off, you know?
Yeah, I could just imagine how irritable it must be,
Right.
especially if you're not getting along.
Right. Right. And then, without seeing just people, or like other people, seeing the same people every single day and then doing the same motions, because you pretty much do the same things depending on your job, just same motion. And people, that'll do something to the human brain, So, and some people would just, the other thing that they might do too is just let us jump off the ship.
Yes, I've
So
seen that on the
I
Discovery
did that
Channel.
a
Now
couple times.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So
Well, so
I
wait,
did do that a couple times.
before or after the accident?
One before on the first deployment and then one after.
Well, that's actually good. How did that help you with your dream about being thrown off the deck? Since now you voluntarily jumped off the deck, did any of that come back while you
So
were standing on the side?
n- no, I needed to jump off that ship. Trust. Trust.
Trust.
Just it was just like a different way to like let um the some of the built up, being on the ship for 9 months, you are in a different mindset, and not on a cruise. Yeah, you are. It's a military job. You're dealing with planes. You're dealing with fuel. You're not seeing your family. You could barely talk to them. You know, it's
Yeah.
almost like so. Um, except you're not like in a cell, but you're still just contained to the ship and not everyone on the ship. I was one of those people that actually ventured out to just walk around because I wasn't sleeping that well. So
Yeah.
I would just get up and just start roaming and finding little areas on the ship where I would just sit there and just watch the horizon.
That's
Um,
actually probably pretty cool. Some of the things you got to see while you were out
yeah,
there.
I took a lot of beautiful pictures of like sunsets and sunrises because I saw a lot of them. um, even just like you're out there, there's no light pollution, so you see a different kind of like sky, at night specifically, and then you have the areas where there's the flying fish or like the fish that glow in the dark that you see them like. So you see, there one of the most unbelievable things that I saw was a thunderstorm, like from afar, where we go on the flight deck and all you see is like a whole, like just miles of just thunder and lightning happening, but from afar.
Yeah.
So I thought that was probably one of the most beautiful, just mind-boggling things. Um, to see that happening just in the middle of the ocean, and not just like one or two, just like hundreds.
Yeah.
That that was crazy. Yeah, that was really cool.
Well, what we're going to do real quick is we're going to take a break because I have a commercial break that's built into this. When we come back, we're going to dive deep into your father and more mental health, and then we'll continue along our journey and way. But I'm really excited about this, and I will see you back here in about 4 minutes or so.
Perfect.
Awesome. We'll see you guys real soon.
When I get low, there's somewhere I like to go. Out walking with my shadow. got me in hand. Though I am tired, you help me stand. But will I be okay?
What's up, guys? If you're enjoying this episode, then you're going to enjoy our gold sponsor, which is Dry Flower, the original hang harvesting system. If you've ever ruined your flower post-chop or lost your terps to a bad dry, it's time to upgrade. Dry Flower makes the full plant hang drying effortless with tools like their drying arms, the rack systems, and the Cannabis Guardian nets, giving you consistent airflow, zero flat spots, and maximum preservation of your strain's full aroma and structure. Built by growers for growers, Dry Flower helps you cure like a king. Our silver sponsor, Current Culture, the gold standard in deep water culture hydroponics. These systems are designed to deliver explosive roots, growth, and nutrient uptake through consistent water circulation and oxidization. Whether you're in a 4-site system for a home setup or a 100-light commercial facility, their undercurrent system and plug-and-play designs make your grow cleaner, faster, and more productive. Precision growing starts at the roots, and that's where Current Culture shines. Legendary Leafies is on a mission to support veterans and break the stigma around cannabis. Through their unique cannabis-themed trading cards, they highlight the plant's therapeutic potential, especially for those that are battling PTSD and anxiety. Legendary Leafies blends education with empowerment, helping veterans and others feel proud and not ashamed of their mental health journey.
When I get low, there's somewhere I like to go. Out walking with my shadow and my garden friend. Oh, Yahweh, I know you got me in hand. Though I am tired, you help me stand. But will I be okay?
What's going on, guys? We are back. I just made that today, which was pretty cool. So I hope you guys like my little commercial break here. Soon I'm going to add a little bit more information, so it goes to about maybe 5-6 minutes long. But it allows us to go ahead and use the bathroom and get refreshed and bring us all back. So we got JM with us right here. We are back together. How are you?
Good, good.
My beautiful wife, Lacey, who is actually getting a PhD in psychology. She wants to work with like big time criminals and serial killers, people on death row and stuff like that. So I know that she really likes the conversation, and she said that she's really enjoying it. So thank you for being here.
Oh, nice.
So
Thank you
with
for-
that being said, we're going to go talk a little bit more, and we talk a lot about suicide on the podcast. And one of the biggest things around mental health is that's like the end game in the opposite direction that, you know, most of us want to take. And unfortunately, there are people who have crossed that line who are either past or fortunate enough to be still living. Let's talk about your father real quick before all that. What was your father like, and who was your father? What was his name?
My dad's name was Balbuena. Yeah, he was an entrepreneur. He was a really dope person, super creative. Also, like dabbled in many different things like different kinds of business that he invested in, or his main business was a construction company. He did focused on kitchen remodels. That's what his focus was. He definitely had a rough childhood. Had a He was raised by his grandma until he was, I think, like 11 or 12, and then his grandma passed away, and he was really poor. He had to like start working from like a young age, like preteen. He started working construction, and um, very smart. Didn't have that much of education, like traditional education, but he definitely like used to read a lot of books. I grew up having like a library room in my house, and so he taught himself about the arts, about like math, um, and got out of one is the poverty that he grew up in. Moved to the United States, and with my mom, they moved when they were married, and yeah, he just with he dealt with a lot of trauma. Honestly, I don't know exactly what the trauma was, but you know, he had schizophrenia. So every now and then and it was like seasonal. So like during the holidays, specifically like around December and then around like Easter time, he would sometimes just have like episodes of schizophrenia. And you know, one day, my parents eventually split. They split up, and we moved to New Jersey with my grandma. And I want to say one day he called my mom and he was like, "I'm done." And then he didn't. And yeah, so I was 16 at that point, and there was a time where like I couldn't even talk about it. But in, just because like when like somebody you love like does that kind of thing, you kind of like wonder like, what the fuck how did I not see that coming? How, and not to say that I didn't see it coming, because for somebody like I grew up seeing my dad having these episodes of schizophrenia every now and then, and um, I'm thinking like somebody that happens, where they become either violent or become, those kind of things, you wonder like, damn, it must be tough to live with those kinds of things. So I wouldn't say like I was super surprised that it happened, but I definitely wasn't expecting it to happen at all. Um, or ever really, but just did the thoughts cross my mind? Yeah, I think I did think about it as a kid, and then it just happened, and yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm rambling now.
With your father, the call that said "I'm done." Were there like any particular
Hmm.
details, or was your mom just like left wondering like, well, what does that mean? And then she hangs up the phone. How were you notified? Like, how did it all go down? And if you don't mind, what happened?
I, I'm just gonna honestly, I don't know. So I'm gonna tell you what I remember. I
Okay.
came home from school, and I'm talking to my mom. I think I'm getting ready to go to maybe softball practice. And the phone rings. We lived in New Jersey at this point. My dad lived in Florida, and the phone rings, and I was talking to my dad, and then my mom pretty much says, "What's wrong?" She's pretty much saying to him, "You need don't talk like that." Da, 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 da. And I'm like, who are you talking to? She's like, oh, it's your father. And then she gives me the phone and said, talk to him. I got to go to the airport. So I'm talking to him, and he starts telling me things like, hey, take care of your sister, be good to your mom. And I'm just like, what the? Why are you talking like that? So then I kind of start freaking out, like crying. And he's like, don't cry, don't cry. I can't, I can't hear that right now. I'm just like, Mom, I'm talking to my mom. I'm telling her, she's like, I'm going to the airport, so she pretty much leaves to the airport, and she doesn't make it in time. So like he pretty much, before my mom left, she made him promise, like, don't do anything stupid. I'm on my way. And then she hung up, and then um, that night before she got there, he shot himself.
Oh, I'm very sorry to hear that. When when your mom got there, was there like anything left behind that explained, the phone call and why he felt
No,
the certain way or what was going on or anything?
no. So my parents, they own like different real estate. So we literally went to like his house and looked for things. We went to like our family home, which was another one, and looking for, we didn't find anything to this day. There hasn't been any.
Do you think do you think it was like stress? Do you think it was just the world got too tough? Like, I
Um,
mean, I guess there's a million reasons
I
why.
think it can be a combination of things. My mom thinks that it probably had to do with the fact that maybe the episodes were getting worse. Um, and then, well, just that, and probably that interfering with his work and even probably relationships and things like that. And just the combination of all of that eventually just did, he just didn't want to deal with it. I mean,
Um,
and I can understand that because like I myself, and back then I didn't, but like as an adult and then dealing with my situation, and then having those thoughts in my mind, it's almost like you hear a voice telling you like, that's it, this shit ain't worth it. um, it's better to be not here. um, Fortunately for me, like I didn't go through with that because and I would say the main reasons, like there, I had the thoughts in my mind, but there was one time where I planned it out and even took some steps, and I would say the one thing that the voice that I heard was, don't do this to your family again. Like, this is not an experience that I would want my mom to experience again or my sister to experience again. And, you know,
if you
so
if you don't
glad
mind me asking,
there's,
oh, go ahead. Sorry, I think we're ending.
no, I was just gonna say that I'm glad that, things just get better. Like, it's sometimes it just feels like it's gonna be the end of the world, so you want to make it the end of the world. But
Hmm.
so I wish like my dad had that thought that I had when I was on that same mindset.
I've never been in the position where I went through with it. When I was younger, I once filled a gasoline or a syringe full of gasoline. When I was younger, I used to take growth hormone, so I had to give myself shots all the time, and I hated it. but I was supposed to be 5'2", and now I'm 5'7", so I guess it worked out. Well, anyways, I had filled up that syringe and I was pushing it lightly against my leg, and instead I took my dad's credit card and ran off to Florida to Universal Studios, um, which in a way was a very very much better decision. Um, but you get to a point where you're just tired, and you can get
Yeah.
that way. Any normal person can get that way. Whether you go to the
Hmm.
drastic side of trying to take your life or not, that's a different story. But I think the biggest thing is, I talk about this dad that I learned about through a story. He had $3 in his bank account. And he had three kids, and he killed himself. And I was like, but you were going to get, somebody, it's like there's resources, there's opportunities. And I understand that some people can't find those, or people are not subjected to them, or don't have access to them. I totally fair. But it's just like what you said, it's like, well, if I'm gone, then who's there? You know what I mean? And it's like
Right.
it comes to that thing that where they need me. I just with your dad and the suicide, had he ever led on to signs like this before, like depression or like pulling back, or like sometimes people will give away their items or be planning to take a trip somewhere that's
No.
really just the end?
So
Nothing.
no, no, no. There was nothing. So here's the when he committed suicide, he did it he lived in Florida. So that's what he did. He flew to the Dominican Republic. That's where he did it. My family's estate over there. So he so that was like the weird thing. That he came from Florida to DR to just so that's where he called my mom from. He just called her and said, "Hey, I'm in the Dominican," and that's when my mom was like, What are you doing there?" Like, and didn't tell me that you were going there. And then and mind you, like when they did the autopsy and everything, perfect condition as far as like his blood work, no, nothing crazy, cholesterol perfect, no cancer, no HIV, nothing that, you know what I'm saying? So there, to this day, we have just not. Now, depression, I think he definitely had that from just,
You had mentioned his
uh,
early childhood.
yeah, from that, the trauma that he never went to therapy. And my mom used to tell him, you should go to therapy, and he just refused to. But that's a cultural thing. He would have been a boomer, like he would be like 74, 75 now if he was still alive. So, from that mentality, that's just like a thing that he didn't want to do therapy. He didn't want to get help. He also didn't take like medication to deal with the schizophrenia that he had. So, and the reason why he didn't want to take it, my mom says, is because it would mess with his like ability to work, to do like the work with the construction, and like his creativity with the remodels and things like that. So, my mom said that that's why he didn't want to take the medication. So, just I think having that untreated and coupled with the life that he lived from a young age. It's just um, what happened. I mean, and this is just all conjectures because, like I said, there's no. The only reason why we know that he did it is because he said he was done and he was gonna do it, and my mom convinced him to like wait, but he didn't wait.
So your mom got there. Did people find him before your mom got there? Like somebody hear and call it in, or did she find him?
So my mom called my uncle that was in the Dominican, and she said, "Hey, he's in the house." Um, so he was like he was like 3 hours away. So he sent his son. So his son went to the house, and his son actually was my cousin was my dad's godson. So, you know, he got to the house and he's with my dad and my cousin. He, the way that he told me and my mom is like he followed him everywhere, even to the bathroom. So like he never left because, my mama put everybody aware
Oh,
of
so wait.
what was going on.
He got down while he was still alive. He didn't just find a dead body.
Yeah, he got there alive. Yes. So, like I said, I still have family down there.
Okay.
So my mom pretty much called people, hey, he's my, Rafael is in the DR. Can you go check up on him? I'm very concerned. But my uncle was at work and he was like a few hours away. So he sent his son, who at that point was 18. And, he saw my dad and they're there. And he's saying that my dad then said to him, like, after spending probably like 2 hours with my dad, but also it's like my mom is at the airport and her flight's delayed. So her flight is delayed. So, like, she got into a flight, but that flight became delayed or whatever. And from Jersey to the Dominican Republic is um, almost a 4 hour flight,
Got
like
you.
3 hours and 5 minutes. So she didn't get there till like 6 hours later because of the
Oh,
delays or
wow.
whatever. But in any case, just to give you the reference, my cousin is with my dad. My dad then tells my cousin that he's going to use the bathroom, but my cousin tells him no. Okay, so my cousin goes in the bathroom with him, and he's like, "What the hell? Like I can't even pee." So my cousin's like, "No, like they told me not to leave you alone." So my dad's like, all right, well, I'm going to pee outside. And he's like, all right, you could do that. And then he did it outside, like he shot himself.
So he must
So
have
then
had
my
the gun
cousin,
on him or something.
yeah. So then my cousin hears what goes outside and, he's freaking the fuck out. But he put him in the car and took him to the hospital. And, but he didn't make it.
Did he, was he alive when he got to the hospital or was he already gone? Um, like, did they ever
Well,
say?
he was, my mom says that he died in the hospital,
Okay.
but he shot himself in the head, like kind of like in the back right
Just
here,
like,
like yeah. So not like in the face part, but it was kind of more like right here.
he was probably trying to do it towards the center or whatever.
I don't know, but that was definitely very traumatic on several people in my family, obviously. So yeah.
When you're in the aftermath of your father's death, do you ever find yourself questioning whether there was something more you could have done? And how did you come to terms with feelings, or are you still battling them?
Um, I definitely had a lot of like guilt, thinking like how, why, like, even like let's say I had an argument with my dad. So my dad passed away in April, and I had an argument with him in December. So in my mind, as a kid, I'm thinking like I did that. Like it probably that argument that we had contributed. So I definitely dealt with a lot of that forever. I want to say that once the accident with the military, now I'm not sleeping. Now I'm thinking about all this other shit, this extra shit. Now I couldn't look away from that in a sense. Like once I was dealing with the concussion and that sleepless situation, then it became like I don't know, that thing was just shining bright in front of my mind, and contributed to the tension that I had, and me now thinking like maybe I should do that too, because I probably contributed to him doing that. But like I said, thank you to the cannabis plant, because that one day, that night that I consumed with, his name is Ward, um, Daniel Ward. Ward is his last name, that's how we call each other, by the last name in the military. He introduced me to weed, and it just, like I said earlier, it changed everything. I realized, like, you need therapy and you need to see somebody. So I called the VA, and, you know, pretty much told them what was going on, even let them know, like, yeah, I'm thinking about doing exactly what my father did. So somebody needs to help me. And I definitely got the help that I needed. And not in the sense, like, it took me three three therapists. Like, the first time, I remember I went to the first one, did it. I did the intro or whatever, and I never went back. Matt, and the VA calls you to find out, hey, why aren't you showing up to your appointments? I was like, literally, I don't like the way it smells. That's pretty much. They were like, what? Like, I don't like the way his office smelled. And they were like, okay. And I'm like, yeah, I don't like. I'm not going back there.
Like, yeah, she's a
So,
crazy one.
yeah. So then they gave me another one, and then that one I find some other excuse of why, he's not, I'm not seeing any healing. We're just talking. And then the third one, um, I would say that one, I got high before I went in. So that
Yes,
was good, because the inhibitions are down.
that's a must.
Then two, I think she pretty much was expecting me to come in with the same pattern that I already had from showing up to the first one, or maybe make it to the third one and then don't come back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she pretty much started with the tough parts first. So like that, she's like, "We're gonna get the shit out of the way," and then eventually, I cried so much that day. That's the day that I told you that I came out, and I just felt like weights came
Yep.
off. Like, I shredded at least 50 pounds. And I remember I looked in the mirror and I said, okay, okay, we're gonna see where this goes, because I just felt lighter from that session with that lady. And I did an entire year going to therapy religiously, twice a week, and then once a week, until then I was okay. And I would say it's not linear, because things happen in life, and then when life gets tough, it feels like everything that was tough before kind of like comes to your mind, like, hey, remember other shit went wrong in 1942 before you were born? Like, it's just like, I don't know what happens to your brain. Like, something, I don't know, let's say we get a fine at the dispensary, like, and it just, a whirlwind of things just start happening, where you just think, you're the person that sucks the most in this world. And the brain has like an affinity to do that. I don't understand why, but fortunately we got weed. That's the good thing about it.
Yep.
So, I just don't let it get too far, before um, I actually try to get my composure, and and ground myself, and that's what cannabis does for me. So,
Now, I want to touch on a couple of things here. Um, when you're in your quiet moment, away from your advocacy and the mission, do you ever feel like you're still carrying the weight of his decision?
sometimes, I mean, and I wouldn't say like carrying the weight. I think I'm beyond that, at this point.
Yeah, you mentioned when the
I would
chains
say
kind of
that,
came off.
yeah, and just like, As an adult, like I was a kid when my dad did that. And one of the things that I finally got through my mind is like, as an adult myself, I do what I'm going to do. It doesn't matter what my mom says or what my neighbor says or what. Ultimately, I have my own mind and I make my own decisions. And so my father made his decision. Um, what I would say is that I do think, like, man, did he know about cannabis? Like, I wish it. Let's say if he was now with me as an adult, especially in the 10 years that I've been in space, I'm like, if he was alive today, that's why I would be making sure that he at least tries that. Or do I think maybe things that I should have said or that I could have done? Absolutely, but I never really tried to dabble too much into things that I can't change at this point.
I think that's
So,
smart. I think
um,
that's in the Serenity Prayer as well.
yeah. And I would say therapy had a lot to do with that mindset and coming to like understanding that number one, as a child, you weren't going to be able to control the adult in your life. And then as an adult now, putting myself in his shoes and just also having that understanding that um, sometimes it gets to that point where you want it to all to be over. Um, and some people cross the line and then some people don't. So I miss him every single day, that's for sure. And I see him every time I look in the mirror because I literally am him in female form. Like I'm his twin. So I try to focus more on, the great memories that I had with my father. He was an amazing dad. Amazing. I mean, he was funny, played sports. He had three girls, so he spoiled the shit out of us. And I think he gave us the life um, that he didn't have as a child, as a kid, and not just me, even to like my cousin, the one that had the unfortunate experience to be right there when he did that. Um, and he just left all of us with, obviously he left with that trauma, but there were so many amazing things that he did for us, for my family, and friends. He was a very loved person. So that's why it's really sad that it ended up the way it did. Um, but we have just so many good memories with him and about him. And he touched so many different, he helped a lot of people um, with financial help, assistance, and he was just like a very given person.
No, he
Um,
sounds like a wonderful person, and more people need to be like him. Last question I have about your father, and then we'll move on to more of the happier topics here. Is if you could sit down with your father today, what would what would be something you would say to him about the path you've taken since his death? Is there still a part of you that seeks his approval or understanding?
Oof, that's a good question. I would tell him I love you. That's what I would tell him. As far as like the path that I've taken, what I said earlier, it's like I found healing in this plant that helped me, and I'm, you know, personally vested, professionally vested in making sure that other people have access to something that can help them, whether it's in the form of cannabis, whether it's in the form of therapy, whether it's in the form of psychedelics, whether it's in the form of natural medicine. That's the path that I've chosen. I hope that you are watching over me and making sure that in this path there's nothing treacherous that I have to to battle. But um, yeah, I mean, mostly I just would tell my dad, I love you, and I hope you're right beside me.
I think that's beautiful. That's really great. No, it
I
is.
appreciate.
Because, thankfully, both of my parents are still around. They're getting old. My dad's um, having issues now. So, as everybody, we all experience the loss of a parent, some sooner than others. But it's just like something you can never replace. And I think sometimes
No,
the memories are the sweetest. And that's why it's so important to
absolutely.
keep those alive and keep those conversations going, because my therapist once told me, which I love therapy too. I have a therapist. It's the greatest thing. If you're not in therapy, you should be in
It is.
therapy. It is amazing. It will
Seriously.
change your life if you let it. But he said there's two types of death. The first type of death is when your heart stops beating. The second type of death is when somebody says your name for the last time. And
Mm,
just like you and your family and everybody else and their families and other things, like my grandmother who died 2 months before Logan was born, I was very, very close to her. We don't let them die in our hearts, and I think that's the most
right.
beautiful thing, is you can still feel those emotions and still have that
Hmm.
love, and it's endless, just like with your animal, and it's one of those things where it's like, it's better to have the and lost or than never to have it all, or I'm butchering
Right.
the quote, but in a way it is, because at least because of your dad, you're here. So
Right.
if anything else, he completed his mission by bringing a family together for a period of time. You know what I mean? So there's also positive ways to look at it. Also, I have a weird relationship with suicide. As a person that almost took my own life and have thought, contemplated it a bunch of times in my own life, um, I have more of a maybe a controversial thought on suicide. I'm actually okay with it, in the sense of like medical, or if somebody is like terminally ill where they're just not good for the earth and they
Right.
want to. Sweden, I think, just opened up
Yeah,
the
I heard about that.
the
Euthanasia.
capsules, and I think that instead of having to do something so traumatic, people that really just feel like they can't do it anymore, maybe just like with your animal gets sick, what do? You take
Right.
it to the nurse to get put down, right? Nobody's like,
Right.
oh my god, you killed your animal. No, it's you you understood the quality of life was no more, and you had to make a hard decision. And I've made that decision before with my snake. I'm never a dog yet, but I actually kind of recognize it as a human right. Like, we have the right to be born. We have the right to do what we want to do in most aspects of life within the laws.
Yeah.
There's a lot of freedom here, and especially in this country. And one of those freedoms of being truly free, maybe it's an unpopular opinion, but that's why this is an honest conversation, um, is that maybe you see that you're not fit for the world, and maybe there's justice in that. I don't know. But I will tell you, when I was younger and when I was 13 years old, you know, I really wanted out because, like what we were talking about earlier, I didn't think about tomorrow. I was just so high level about right now, and I wanted it's like you almost want something to happen right now, so you do something traumatic, like throw your cell phone at the mirror so it breaks because you're
Right.
just mad and you want to see destruction. You know what I mean? So what do you think about that?
Well, I do think it's right. If you, let's say, get into an accident and now you're paralyzed from like the neck down, and there's really,
Perfect
and they're telling
example.
you you might only live 10 more years, but you're gonna do them where you can't. move. All your eyes are open, but there's nothing really. So now you're pretty much somebody else. You're either laying down, which also causes the body to deteriorate because then you get sores, and those sores get infected. And um, so I think if somebody makes that radical decision, I do also believe that they have the right to do so. Um, I do think that they should see like therapy,
Absolutely, 100%.
and actually being
Exhaust all
able
efforts.
to communicate the reasons why they want it. And um, do I think there should be like a criteria, not just like, hey, I'm done today, so I want to get in there? Um, no, there should be like a process just to make sure, because obviously you can't come back from that. Um, and if you're going to leave a family behind, um, I'm not, I think there's just so many different factors that need
100%.
to be taken. But I do think there are, I mean, this is probably even controversial to say, but just like women have the right to choose, um, like to either keep
Yep.
a pregnancy or not, somebody also can have the right to decide, hey, I'm don't want to be here anymore because life is not going to be worth it, or extremely limited in some occasions, or I'm going to have to do this treatment that is only going to extend my life for 2 more months. I think people should have autonomy,
Mm,
to make those decisions for sure.
100%. And I agree with you. It shouldn't be one of those things where, well, I stubbed my toe today, my dog ran away, and my fridge broke, so
Right.
now I just want out. And it's like, oh, well, come on in.
Right.
I don't think it should be like that. Honestly, it kind of should be like with, this is a controversial topic, but I've had a panel is LGBTQIA when they go into transitions, from transitioning to man or woman, they have to go through psychological like exams to make sure that they're
Right.
physically and mentally fit to actually have these procedures. So in a way, I think it would be much mimicked like that, where it would be a process. Maybe they have a fast
Right.
one. If hey, you're gonna die of some horrible cancer, and for the next 2 months, it's gonna be excruciating pain. Maybe we might get
Hmm.
him in a little bit sooner. You know what I mean? But I
Right.
definitely agree with you, and that's
Or
why,
where they say there's nothing you can do. Like, you know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Now we just wait for you to die,
yeah. Well,
essentially,
like when you're
because
in
there's people
hospice, why
like
wait?
terminally kill, yeah, terminally. Right. So it's either why wait? You have 2 weeks, and now you're just like this slow roll where you're waiting. I mean, and some people might decide to do it.
Hmm.
But somebody that where they say, look, your um, uh, cancer spread to everywhere in the body. Now, we just wait because there's nothing we can do. If that person then decides, and I would definitely get a second opinion and a third
Yes.
one and probably a fourth one as well. But once all those boxes are checked, then I think the person, like I said earlier, should have autonomy in that regard.
I think it's our uncomfortability with death which makes it taboo. And even my
Mm-hmm.
therapist told me it is good to have a relationship with death and to
Mm-hmm.
be okay with the idea and the
Right.
understanding that
Because,
everybody will die, and that we are essentially dying each day, slowly
mm-hmm.
by slowly. And
Correct.
it doesn't have to be this morbid, dark thing. I was just at a funeral for a very good friend of mine and one of my clients' wives who died of cancer. Now, she's been battling it for a very long time, but they didn't have a funeral. They had a celebration of life. And they were cracking jokes. They were laughing the whole time. Yeah, there was tears shed, but the environment was totally different than a funeral. And it gave me the inspiration. It was like, wow, when I go out, I want to have what they had. That was fun. Like, that was actually like a family reunion with some tears versus this long, drawn out funeral
Mm-hmm.
where everything's dark and morbid and all that. And I
Right.
think, the more we look at death and life and gratitude and appreciation for just, being here, the more and more we become susceptible to finding the light instead of the darkness,
Right.
and making decisions that are about self-preservation and longevity, and maybe one day and that's why these conversations are so important, because maybe there's a father listening tonight, or maybe the father 6 months from now will just happen to pull this on as he's having a rough day, and this conversation will be enough to give him more time here and make better decisions.
Right.
That's why, it's so important to remember these people who have lost their lives in whatever capacity, and kind of honor them and say, what can we truly learn? What could we, do? Obviously, you can't babysit somebody and be around them 24/7. Your
Right.
godson, recognized that, is slipped in
Mhm.
judgment, but you don't know. And if it's not now, if somebody really wants out, it's later. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that's one of the unfortunate things. All right, let's switch topics, and we're going to talk about advocacy and education. So,
Mm.
being a Latina veteran advocating for cannabis, what challenges have you faced in your own community?
In my own community, let's see, as far as like the Latino community
Just, I guess, being a
or San
Latina
Diego
veteran and advocating through those three.
or cannabis.
Yeah, for cannabis, what
Well,
kind of
I think the
challenges?
challenges, the challenges, the challenges would just be battling the stigma. Really, that's the biggest challenge because you battle it in business, you battle it in social, in the social aspect of things. You battle it even in advocacy where you're um, going into, let's say, city council and they're discussing cannabis, and then you have individuals from the community who have to continue to have kind of like reefer madness mentality of what cannabis is and what it can contribute or not contribute or be detrimental to the communities. And so always we always have to have that pretty much be ready for to take on that fight. So that would be the number one challenge. In San Diego specifically, the challenge that we are experiencing right now, for which I am advocating, is in creating social equity within the legal framework. We are the second largest city in California, and we're the only one of the large cities that has not implemented social equity in the legal framework. And we actually were doing the work. The Had great relationships with the division that manages the cannabis department with the city, and one day, the mayor just woke up and decided to undo all the progress that was being done for years,
Of course.
doing research. So we got a grant from the state of California to do research in 2021 about which groups or what was the impact of cannabis in San Diego's community. And so it determined that, Latinos, Blacks, and Native Americans and Pacific Islanders experience way more incarceration
Mm-hmm.
um, for cannabis than anyone else.
Yep.
And so now, mind you, social equity doesn't mean that those people automatically qualify for, to be a social equity candidate. What it means is that the likelihood of the majority of the people might be that, but that doesn't mean that they have to be. Some of those people might not even live in San Diego anymore. And so the criteria is that you have to have a cannabis conviction that happened in um, from 20 up until 2016. Like, it's like between 2016 and like 1985. And so it's you know, that was what we were looking for. And then, like I said, the mayor decided to axe the program as it was in development.
Mm.
We even, it's so weird because we received, so we had the grant to do the research to confirm that social equity would be a positive thing to do for the community of San Diego. So, boom, we got that out of the way. Then we were able to get an $800,000 grant to start the program. And it was shortly after getting that grant that the mayor decided to axe the development of the program. And so it's obvious that there were some people lobbying for this not to happen. Whenever we had community hearings and things like that with the elected officials, some people would show up to pretty much say, no, we don't want that to happen. Some current operators, people that operate under non-social equity designation, just like the people that have licenses, some of their lawyers would show up and also argue against it. So I guess that side, unfortunately, won that particular battle. But we're still working for that to change. I actually put out a documentary that about that situation, and it's definitely been well received in San Diego. I The documentary. Well, I was able to win a filmmaker of the local filmmaker um, for the San Diego Short Film Festival, and I just got selected for the San Diego Film Festival. Or not me,
Congratulations, by
the
the way.
film. Thank you. The film for best documentary in the San Diego Film Awards. So that's coming up in June. So I'm excited about that one. So I took all of that and was able to create a documentary because I was already filming the advocacy campaign to advocate for social equity was called Roll Up for Equity. So I was filming the advocates and the activists that would show up to city council, and we had a whole campaign where we brought postcards to the community and had people fill out a survey about how they felt about social equity or about having cannabis in their neighborhoods. And so we will collect them in the hundreds and bring them to city council and to show them, hey, look, these are your constituents, and these are the people in your communities that actually this is how they feel, whether it was positive or negative. But we got like two negative out of about over 500 that we distributed, and so distributed and then collected. And so I was filming that, and then all of this is happening, and then the mayor axed the program. So I had all that footage of how things transpired. So I put it in a documentary and put it out. So that that's how I use the advocacy itself and my skills to do to overcome the challenges.
Well, that's awesome. That's part of being the overachiever that you are, and honestly, just putting your best foot forward. Half the time, it's not about being the best. It's just the person that gets it done and actually creates it.
Right.
Can't tell you how many people,
Facts.
including me, overthink their media and then wind up putting out nothing when you should just put out something. You know what I mean? Something's better
Something,
than
right?
nothing. So, talk a little bit about, because outside of cannabis, I do video production for a living. So we kind of get this film same sense as far as creativity and minds. Is this the first a documentary that you ever shot, or?
Yeah, it's my first
That's
documentary.
awesome.
I
You
did a
already won an
short,
award. Look
a
at
short film
you.
before. Yeah, so the documentary has won 5 awards so far.
Congratulations. What do you
I
think that?
went in and
Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say I put it in the film festival circuit, like the local here and the different. There's some cannabis centric ones, but also like in the local San Diego ones, and we actually showed it in LA at one of the Regal cinemas over there during one of the film festivals. So it's been really cool, and it's definitely gotten a lot of good feedback. I've gotten a lot of good feedback from it. So
What do you think people
So,
like most about the documentary? How does a documentary win 5 awards, and what are the categories?
so the categories, well, what do people like about it?
Yeah,
I
like what are
think,
they saying? Like like riveting,
yeah.
jaw,
So
stopping or whatever it
what they
is.
say is that they didn't know that. So the people that are cannabis consumers, unless
Hmm.
you're in the industry, these are not issues that you know exist. You know? So I would say the feedback that I have received from like judges and things like that is that wow, I did not even know that the topic um that was a thing happening here in my own backyard in San Diego. Then you
Okay.
have the ones, so I've gotten compliments on the cinematography of the documentary because at the short film festival where I won local filmmaker, for that one, the guy said, "Wow, you made a documentary interesting, with the imagery." So that was kind of cool to it was to hear.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. You should be proud of yourself. That's
yeah.
awesome.
No, super, super. Because my passion is that. Like I love weed, but my passion is filmmaking and producing and just like the different aspects of creating, putting together a production. So, um,
We should make a film together called JM and Madman Go to White Castle.
ah, we already did that one, so we'll do a remake.
The Humar,
That one version.
yeah, Coomer. Yeah, actually though,
We
when I was in LA, that Jack in the Box, man, whoo, I had the same thing 2 days in a
Jack in the
row.
Box originally from San Diego. They're headquartered here. Um,
Ah,
the San
yeah.
Diego thing, yeah.
So talk a
But
little bit about
oh,
your. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
no, I was just gonna say I'm down to make a film. We should do that. It'd be
That
awesome.
would be hilarious. Cause I like you, I got all the cameras, the film gear, all the
Hmm.
cool stuff. So, this will be real easy for both of us. Um,
Right?
so tell me a little bit about the book and writing a book and everything like this. Is this a New York bestseller? Is this on?
Amazon.
Oh,
The
there you
my
go.
first one, the Successful Entrepreneur. Hmm.
And then
So
the
the Successful
success for
Entrepreneur.
Cannapaneer and Green Renaissance.
Hmm. The Successful Entrepreneur is my first book. I wrote that one during COVID in 2020. Um, I had been in the space for 6 years. Well, funny story, I wasn't writing a cannabis book. I was writing a book about empowering yourself and how to get out of that rut that I was in and using cannabis too. But also recognizing like the challenges and how to overcome them. But anyway, I had that manuscript and then I sent it to a publisher and then the publisher asked me for a resume. So I sent them my resume and they were like, you should write about weed. And I was like, what? I've only been in the space for 6 years. Like I don't think, and they were like, yeah, but there's people that have been in the space for 2 months. All that what you've learned you can put it into the book, and now you actually have your resume can back up what you're talking about, because they said since you've never been an author before you're going to get drowned in a sea of self-help books, um, and in the weed space there hasn't been that many books written by Latino or Latino women or veteran Latino
Oh
women
yeah.
or a woman that's an immigrant and all of that other stuff. So she's like, you have more edge if you write about that. And then I said, okay, let me see if I have a book in my. So she's like, write an outline, and if you're able to put in an outline together, we this is the route that we're gonna go. So I put my outline together. They loved it. And then I entered their program and I wrote my ass off from there. Just it's in that particular book is just about the my story and getting into the space. A lot of the stuff that we talked about here today, like joining the military, then using cannabis, being becoming a patient, and then taking it from there. And you know, just everything, starting the dispensary and doing consulting for people to get licenses once California started rolling that out. And boom, up until 2020, which is when the book was published. My second one, Green Renaissance, it's about the historical influence of cannabis um, in lifestyle, in wellness, lifestyle, and culture globally. So there, I did a bunch of research. It's pretty much a long ass research paper. So I start from you know the earliest that we know that cannabis has been used by humans up until 2024 and what was going on there. That at that point we the president Joe Biden at that point started discussing of potential rescheduling. So that's pretty much where the history ends. But I talk there about um, the reason, just the green renaissance. Like this is not new. Cannabis was medicine. It's been medicine from the beginning. It became criminalized, and now it's coming back to its original roots. So it's an exciting time to be alive, to witness that happening, for the stigma to be reduced and for more countries to open up and legalize, and for even if it's just for medical purposes or some even for just CBD, but it's a step forward
Oh,
in that second
100%.
book.
And like you said, it's going back to our roots. I mean, these plants, mushrooms, and other things have been here way longer than we are. And we kind of
Right.
turned our back on it because I feel like, well, you can't make money off of something that grows from the ground, you know? And it's like we trust so much in these pharmaceuticals when people live for millions of years without pharmaceuticals. Not that I'm against pharmaceuticals. I mean, hey, if I'm sick and I need a Z pack or, whatever, it happens. But I'm a person that, is really, especially with ADHD, depression, anxiety, I try to just limit that. You know what I mean? So if I am using
Hmm.
it, it's just for a period of time. It's not forever.
Right.
Because I also believe heavily too that you're in control. And if you take accountability, responsibility, and you have the discipline, you can do anything.
Right. I agree.
Yeah, mission oriented. So talk about the future. Where is JM headed? And where are we going next?
Well, the future is definitely Ryan's Law being implemented in all the legal states. Right now, we made it such in California. So legally, right now, since 2021 in California, if you're in hospice care and you want to consume cannabis, by law, they have to allow you to do that. Non-smokable, but at that point in palliative care, individuals are usually doing oils or transdermal patches or edibles in or drinks or
Tinctures,
suppositories.
RSO, yeah, suppositories.
Yeah,
Those are big, actually.
yeah. So those are all allowed in hospitals in California um, for terminally ill patients. So we right now we have a bill that is in the process already in Oregon and a bill in Rhode Island. So this year, those two states, in the next few months, they should be coming online as well. And we have conversations and teams on the ground in all the different legal states right now. So in the next, I want to say 2 to 3 years, we should see a majority of the legal states having Ryan's Law implemented in getting terminally ill patients to have access to cannabis as an option. So I don't know if you're familiar with why Ryan's Law started,
No,
but
can you
it did.
please inform us and our guests?
Absolutely. So Ryan's Law started because Jim Bartell, the father of Ryan, um, when Ryan passed away, so he had an experience in the hospitals in a legal state, the state of Washington. His son was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. They gave him 7 weeks to live.
Mm.
The first 2 weeks, he was comatose. He was under morphine and then fentanyl. And so he only would be awake and barely even functional to even have a conversation for like 2 to 3 hours per day. And then in one of those times, he asked his father, Jim Bartell, like, hey, can we try cannabis or something? Because he had a 9 year old and a wife that he's going to leave behind. And he wants to spend quality time with them. And so Jim, who he does work in the cannabis space and the ancillary space. He has a firm that does compliance and license acquisition. And so he called in the network, and they were able to get a doctor who came in with some RSO, custom made for the condition and everything. He Ryan Bartell takes the cannabis oil, goes to sleep, and mind you, he couldn't even swallow. So they put it under his tongue, and then a full gram. He went to bed, slept 6 hours, woke up alert, no pain, able to communicate, to the point that the hospital, the nurse came in and was like, "What is going on here?" So when they told her, she pretty much said that she had to report it
Oh shit.
because cannabis was not allowed in the premises. And so the doctor came in and told them, "Nope, you can't do that here." So they were like, "But it's legal and it's not smoking." And they were like, "Nope, no cannabis." And they cited fears of their federal funding being taken away, or any licenses and things of that nature. So Jim Bartell, the father, he called 23 different hospitals before one said yes, that they would do it. So they transferred him, and then by that time he had 2 weeks left to live. So those 2 weeks, he used cannabis, and he passed away. And then Jim, his father, he's originally from here, from San Diego, so he came to San Diego, and then he said, "I'm gonna make it my mission so that other families don't have to go through that." And he wrote the law. He found one of the senators to co-sponsor it. And in 2021, it passed in San Diego. I mean, not in San Diego, but in California. And from there, now we are pretty close to getting, like I said earlier, Rhode Island and Oregon to implement it. And hopefully the rest of the states follow.
That's awesome. His dad did that. I'm so sorry that Ryan passed away. You know, pancreatic cancer is one of those aggressive ones,
Yeah,
like colon
very.
cancer. You know, if you can catch it early, you're
Hmm.
lucky. But that's what I
Yeah,
don't get.
usually when they find it, it's too late for the pancreatic one. That's
Yeah,
the thing.
yeah. I would. I don't know what I would be thinking at that point. But at the same time, and that's the whole thing with the right is like, listen, I'm in that case, the person is dying, so just let
Right,
them have whatever the fuck they want. You know what I mean?
right.
Like if it comforts them, if it makes them a little bit better, if it provides some quality, who gives a shit? Why does it have to be such like a oh my god, it's not like you gave them meth and then all of a sudden meth brought them back, you know, like and you're like, hey, look, we
But if
got
meth
this.
does bring him back, then why not though? Like, not to say that
Well, you're gonna save
meth.
his life, and then you're gonna have to get him off drugs. It's a longer process with that. See, you know.
I mean, what I'm saying, he's already at that point. If they giving you 2 weeks to live, and the thing that's taking your pain away is meth.
Well, I guess if I had 2 weeks to left, maybe I'd just try it anyways. Be like, well, fuck it.
Right.
Can't get addicted if I'm gonna
No,
die.
nobody. That's not what we're promoting here at all.
Uh,
But I'm just saying, like at that point, it's just a quality of life issue,
I
not a
agree.
drug addiction issue or a You know, and that's what we're saying with cannabis. Cannabis obviously is a plant; it's already legal. I don't think they should be allowing anything illegal or anything
I do
of
think
that nature.
mushrooms would also be really good in a sense like that.
Absolutely, anything that is being already like regulated and qualifies as a medicine for people, I think they should allow it. For sure, cannabis, because there is definitely proven track that it helps with pain. It might help with, let's say, eating. And you know, hospitals are offering it because my uncle passed away in 2024, and he was in hospice care, and he wasn't eating, and this is in New Jersey, which they're already a legal state at that point. And the doctor told my mom and my aunts and uncles, they said, hey, we can try to give him a cannabis derived product, and that can help him with his appetite. And you know, my family is not necessarily gun ho about cannabis, but once they heard that it would help, and I think because they heard it from a doctor at the hospital, they felt super comfortable. They were like, give him whatever he needs, you know, if it's gonna help, you know. So I think slowly but surely we're getting there, and that's what the Green Renaissance is about. You know that slowly but surely the stigma is being, you know, proven that it's unnecessary. This is a plant, is medicine. It can help people. The worst that can happen is that you're hungry or sleepy or, you know, one feeling creative to write, to paint, to, you know, to just chill.
Yep.
And it just helps people, you know, to sleep, to be pain free, to relax, you know, to calm their mind. I remember in one of the panels, one of the panelists, I think Mac was sitting next to me. He mentioned that his mind is really fast, and cannabis helps him like slow it down so he can
Yep.
think and ground himself. And you know, why should people be robbed of that? You know?
Well, that's what I'm saying. And had the people that have had problems with me, I got kicked out of the Latin American Motorcycle Association, which I was like, listen, you guys are from Latin America. I don't understand what is going on here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. It's
What they
first of all,
say?
it's bike week too, and they were like, well, the president of the club has a security clearance, and he's worried that if you got in trouble, he'd lose his security clearance. And it's like, nobody gives a fuck. It's weed. We're
Right?
at Bike Week down in Florida. That's like the minimum thing that you should be worried about having on
Right.
you. Anyways, that, and I also got kicked out of the Freemasons. I have a podcast about it where I smoked a joint while everybody was smoking a cigar, and I had alcoholics tell me that, you know, pretty much that alcohol is legal and cannabis is going to ruin my life, and they care about me and my family and they want me to do well, but they also want to kick me out of the club. So that was really confusing. And then, you know, I went
Wow,
into
I'm
the
sorry that
doctor's
happened.
office with my son one day. The next time, my wife goes in with them, and they're like, "Hey, listen, your husband reeks of weed, and he smelled up the waiting room, and we had to air it out for 2 days." And I'm like, "Yeah, because I smoked
Where
right
was
in the
that?
lobby." This is at the doctor's office. I'm like, get the fuck out of here, dude. Like, you got a whiff of it
What?
from my sweatshirt. Shut up. You know, like,
That's insane.
we had to
That they
clear out the office
clear
for
it
two
out.
days. Yeah. I'm sorry. I can smoke right now in my house, come back in 2 hours, and it's gone, pretty much.
It's begun. Right.
Yeah.
So they lied for sure.
Oh, they do. But it's because everybody has a problem. But when it comes to alcohol and other stuff, and hey, people can be addicted to coffee, caffeine,
Right.
sleeping
Sugar.
pills, whatever. You know, everybody has their poison one way or another, whether it's
Hmm.
exercise and that's what you get off on, whatever. Everybody has what they like. My
Right.
thing is, every time I've smoked weed, from what I remember, I've always been either with friends or by myself. So all the people that seem to have a problem with it were never really around when I was doing it, because I was usually
Hmm.
hiding it from them or just not
And
doing
they
it
probably
around
needed the
them.
most.
Yes, they did. And they're probably mad because I didn't share. But
Haters
listen,
gonna
all
hate.
right. So we got 10 minutes left, and this is where I open the floor to my guests. And anything that we didn't talk about, anything that you want to talk about, anything at all, we'll do that for the next 10 minutes. So go for it.
Okay, well, I think we covered pretty much everything. I just want to say that I'm thankful for the opportunity to come on your platform and share my story, talk about things that I really hadn't talked about in public like that. So that was like very on the spot. But, I definitely I tried, to just ground myself and be okay because it's a conversation and I think it's a part of my story and there's no shame in that. But just wanted to say thank you. And any questions that people might have, let me know what they are.
Oh yeah, if anybody has questions right now, feel free to ask JM, and no problem at all. The whole platform is designed like that Vindic EU, which is also tattooed on my wrist, right there.
I did see that.
Is stands for I heal, and it's in
Mm,
Romanian because I'm Romanian. And then so you have SmokeBusters on top, which you can't see because of the
hmm
racks here, and then we have Vindic EU. So SmokeBusters is all about business, equity, tech, all the kind of the things about cannabis directly, breaking the stigma.
hmm
And then Vindic EU is a part of the SmokeBusters platform, but this would be like a Vindic EU episode where I target specifically on mental health and the deep, hard
hmm
conversations, things that people haven't talked about or maybe dealt with. And that's one thing I like is it's not just conversation. With the right conversation with honestly anybody, that's a form of therapy. You know what I mean?
hmm
And to be able to actually do what I consider real work, which is talk to people and work with them. And even if we're just having a conversation or I'm mentoring them or kind of guiding them, it's a way for me to improve my skills as a human, to be more compassionate, understanding, more grounded. But it's also a way for me to expand where it's not just a conversation, it's a true movement. Just like you with your documentary and your book and everything that you have going on, you're not building a brand, you're building a movement. You know what I mean?
hmm
Just like with Ryan's Law, that's a movement.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it
Right.
becomes much more when you embody those type of values than just the factor of, hey, we're having a great podcast. And that's what I try to
hmm
do to differentiate myself, is to make sure that everything I do has value. So when you spend 2.5, 3 hours watching me, you can feel like you walked away with something, like a really good movie, like when you see the fighter jets and like Top Gun, and you walk out there and you're like,
hmm
I want to be a pilot. You know what I mean? Like that's the way I want to feel, whether it's like excitement or laughter or crying. It's the
hmm
ability to leave a footprint on somebody.
Agreed. Yeah, make a positive impact. That's pretty much how I moved too. The main reason why I did my first book was once the publisher told me, "Hey, there's people that are just starting out. Like, that book can be a line." And from that perspective, definitely, I said, "All right, shit, I'll write a book." I love writing, so I put it, I did it there, and then I did self-publish Spring Renaissance, and that one was more of me being so passionate about the plant where I have a bunch of books. I'm always doing research, reading the news and the current events about what's happening so I can stay informed and speak. If I'm doing an advocacy thing with city council, when I can speak from an informed perspective, or even just speaking to the neighbor next door about cannabis or plant medicine in general. How you're going to create an impact is speaking from an informed perspective,
Yep.
um, and taking it from that point of view and answering questions in a way that, you know, I'm not getting offended by their quote unquote lack of understanding or knowledge and things like that. And um, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and I've always said, like, we have a wonderful governor here, Youngkin, which I
Hmm.
really don't have anything against him. I just don't like the way he thinks about cannabis. And
Hmm.
sometimes the stuff that he says to me, my opinion, is misinforming and not what I've experienced through traveling the United States and having over 700 conversations about mental health with different people, and he thinks that cannabis actually makes mental health worse. And I actually had
Worse. Yeah.
somebody say that, "Oh, you're promoting what can give people psychosis," and it's like, listen, if you're gonna develop some kind of neurological issue like psychosis, that could have been with or without cannabis. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, that's like me saying, "Oh, because I ate red number 5 or whatever number 6, whatever the number is,
Right.
and I got cancer later. It's all because of this one thing that I did." It's genetics, you
Right.
know. Sometimes cancer is like a time bomb in some of us. It just
Right.
activates. Like, I had a colonoscopy, and they took precancerous polyps that the doctor said that if I did not have it done now, by the
Removed.
time I was 45, they would have already been active. You know what I
No
mean?
way.
So it's one of those things where you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's the
Right.
ignorance and the bliss to a lot of the confusion. But what I do see from a lot of people, even our great sponsor, Canna Scoops, who was actually against cannabis, and I was just going to say, like with Mr. Youngkin, like, let's just say, God forbid, don't want anything bad to happen to him or his family, but let's just say someone in his family did get sick. And he realized all of a sudden through cannabis, his loved one is getting better. Do you think his opinion might change when he saw it firsthand through somebody he loved versus just a critic versus just somebody like you and I? They're like, hey, listen, this is a great plant. You misunderstand. I truly
Hmm.
think immersion is the best way we're going to get more and more people on the cannabis train. Whether it's
Right.
their health, whether it's their sleep, whether it's their eating, it's almost positioning it like a multivitamin or a supplement that they use to achieve whatever personal goal they have. My headache hurts. Here's a joint. You know what I mean? I don't feel well. Here's a joint. My toe hurts. Here's a joint.
There's a strain for that.
Yeah, we got a joint for that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, you know, most people are going to change their minds when they see it in action. Most people I have that mindset of I have to see it to believe it. Um, and I think because of legalization, more people are able to witness people consuming cannabis. And like you say, you had 700 conversations, and none of those conversations led to somebody having psychosis. And I'm pretty sure these people that are saying that are not talking to 700 people. You know what I'm saying? So,
Or if
you
you are,
doing
you're
your
talking to that one person that had a bad experience with cannabis that now has psychosis for some reason. You know?
But correct, but that's not even most people either. But I do think that maybe that happens to some people because I know a
Is
couple of
cannabis for
people that
everybody? Absolutely not. We
no.
know for a fact that alcohol is not for everybody. So it's
Right.
one of those things is drink responsibly, smoke responsibly, know yourself, know your strain, you know, type
You have an
thing.
issue like where you do get anxiety or experience psychosis or to the point that you have to be hospitalized, because I know a couple of people that had to be taken, you know,
I'm
only
not
to
saying that it can't happen. I'm just
no,
saying
yes,
that out of
100%.
all the
When
events,
I'm
nobody has gone home with psychosis that I know of.
correct, 100%. So, but when that's what I'm saying is that as legalization happen and more people try it out, you will see that more people are going to be okay, and there might be a small percentage of the population that is just not for them. And it could even be that it wasn't for them at that time because perhaps they were already on the verge of,
How many
a mental
21
breakdown.
years olds
Or
blow it the night they turn 21 and you either end up in a horrible accident or in jail?
hmm
You know what I mean?
hmm
It's a freedom and it's also a
right.
responsibility, you know.
Agreed. I agree 100%.
All right. Well,
What
what's
age
that?
did you start smoking or
When?
consuming? How old were you?
Okay, so when I first started smoking, I tried for the very first time when I was like 13 or 14 years old.
Mm.
And all my friends and me smoked, and I didn't get high. And they were all like, "Oh man, I'm so high." And I'm like, "You're all fucking
Mm-hmm.
lying. None of this shit works. You guys just all make
Uh-huh.
this up." So nothing happened. Well, later, me and my friend John, who died of a heroin overdose behind a dumpster, um, we got weed for the very first time later when I was a child. And we didn't even know how to smoke it. We rolled up an index card and just put the joint in there like a nug and tried to light it and smoke it that way. Did not go
That's
very
great.
well. Yeah. When I was going for the police academy, while I was just taking my police exam, I was working at Domino's, like I said, and I met somebody
Mm-hmm.
that sold weed. And that was the first time I'd ever really started smoking on my own. And the first time I ever did smoke and I got high, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I ran into my mom's room and I was like, "Mom, I think I'm gonna have a heart attack." I was like, "I smoked weed. I'm really, really sorry." And I'm freaking out. And she's like, "Stefan, nobody's ever died from smoking weed." And I was like, "Oh,
Ah,
okay.
so
Well, that's good, I guess." And I was like, "I'm sorry I woke you up." And then I went to my room and like passed out. And then like I would smoke and I would like
good.
hear noises and like I get freaked out. And then like I
Mm-hmm.
said earlier, I was like, if everybody else can do it, then what the fuck is wrong with me? So I just started smoking more
Mm-hmm.
and more and now I love it.
I did it for the first time. I was 18 in college. Um, I didn't get high the first time, for sure.
Yep.
And then because then I thought it was like, oh, so this is like smoking a cigarette. Then I did it at parties every now and then I was like, oh shit. But mostly I would just get sleepy and like my eyes would get super low, and I was ready to go, pretty much. So, but I didn't actually start it actually like where I'm going to get some or like buy some from someone or to the dispensary. That was definitely in my mid late 20s already.
That's
So,
awesome. Yeah, late bloomer. It was around 23 when I
hmm
started smoking professionally. And then
hmm
2021 or 2020, whenever Virginia legalized, I was 6 months ahead of the curve.
hmm
And it was funny because when I first started growing, like it wasn't time yet in Virginia, and I had a lock on the door, and nobody could come in. And now I'm like, "Hey, you want to see the garden?" You know, it's like, wow, what time has really changed over the years, you know?
And how did you go from smoking to growing?
My friend Frank, which I haven't talked to in a while, he started growing first, and I was spending like $1,500, almost $2,000 a month on weed because I have to go up to DC, and
hmm
you have to buy
To
from like,
get some.
yeah, I went to like Area 71. There was a whole bunch, and I went on weed maps. And the problem with DC is you go there and then you have to wait 45 minutes and then they're like, "Hey, do you mind switching locations? It's just 15 minutes this way." Yeah, if there's no traffic. So it comes 30
hmm
minutes and then you're hoping the dude won't leave because he's like, "Hey man, I need you to be here." And it's like, "Well, you're the one that told me to leave. I was already there." And then you're sketched out because you have to buy stuff
Yeah.
and everything. And my friend was like, he's like, I've been growing, and he's like, you get a lot off of it. So I convinced my wife. I was like, can I get a grow tent? I was like, we can spend less on weed, if I just grow it. And she's like, yeah, that's fine.
That's a
So we
good
bought the
call.
grow tent. Oh, my wife's awesome. Lacey's a Mad Madam plant, and she's my ride or
hmm
die. Like she's got my back
That's
like
awesome.
nobody else. Oh yeah. Like, yeah, no, she's amazing. Anyways,
So you got her and you got Honey
her and Honey, and I got my son Logan.
and
Yep,
Logan.
full little family
That's all.
here. But
Mm-hmm.
oh shit, what was I saying? Oh man, I forgot.
I think we're wrapping up.
Wrapping up, yes. Um, what was I talking about though? I was talking about something.
Well, I just asked you the question from growing, from smoking to growing.
Oh yeah, there you go. And so I bought the equipment, and I started growing, started making a YouTube, and we have a production company. So I was like, well, hey, let me get in business with some of the companies that do cannabis. So I started doing video production for a couple brands like Canatrol, Easy Trim Harvesting,
Mm-hmm.
Nican, whole bunch of different companies. And then I inadvertently blew up my own brand because we're good at marketing and we have a great background, great story, and we're really about mental health and clarity and home growing and really building
Mm-hmm.
individuals and their plants. Um, and one thing led to another, and that's why we were on tour last year. We hit 15 states in 12 months, which was really awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was cool.
Yeah.
This year, we're actually doing a
That sounds
grow
awesome.
series. So instead of being on the road, we're actually being at home. But we're traveling to teach like classes, do my mental health panels. Also,
Mm-hmm.
um, in the soon near future, because I don't want to promise anything yet because it's not in stone, but I'm going to be holding my first mental health retreat, which I would love for you to
Oh,
fly out for. This will be in New York or
oh,
New
dope.
Jersey or New York. But it's going to be like an all inclusive, but it's going to be all about wellness, and I'm going to have different
Mm-hmm.
people
Well, I'm
there. So
originally from Jersey, so
I know
I
you
got
mentioned that. So I think that would be perfect, but definitely check
yeah.
it
Count
out.
me.
But my biggest philosophy is it's great to smoke cannabis, but how can you grow a great garden if you can't grow a great human? And the fact that a lot of it, like smoking, like gardening, it represents instant gratification. In 3 to 6 months, I'm going to see my plant grow. In 65 to about 115 days, you have a harvest, especially like on an autoflower. But in real life, we don't have that opportunity to see our life change like our plants. So we spend more time nowadays focusing on things that we can see right away that we think is like longevity and self-preservation, but it's not. It's the short term. And what really benefits us is looking at the long term and saying, how do I invest in this? How do I make this worth my time, my energy, and then how, like, just like with what you're doing, how do I get the most out of this to not only just serve me financially, but to serve me, spiritually, mentally, and physically, and do something that can really ultimately change people's lives, whether that's laws
Right.
or books or documentaries. It's opening minds can do a lot, and especially in this type of movement, we need to act as one. And unfortunately, with cannabis, there's a lot of um, there's a lot of clicks, there's a lot of chads, there's a lot of things that take away from everybody being on board. And I think the biggest thing right now is we don't need to be fighting each other or an industry. We need to be fighting for the sole fact that we can never go back on this. It's and looking at some of the things that you see in the news, it makes you wonder where will the balance of cannabis be? And if we're so distracted
Mm-hmm.
on other things versus what's really going on, we may miss our opportunity. And I've already told Lacey, if Virginia turns its back on home growers, I'm sorry, we're selling the house, and I'm going to a state
Moving.
where you can like be a caregiver, and I can have as many fucking plants as I want because I would just give it away at that point. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I've already told her, Virginia changes, we're out of here because I cannot not
That's
grow anymore.
crazy.
Do you grow?
Well, and I don't grow. No,
You
no,
need
no.
to. You need to get a 3 by 3 tent, which is 3 feet by 3 feet. One little
Mm-hmm.
current culture, 8 gallon,
You know
hundred.
what? I will. I will. I'm gonna have to put that
I'll help you.
in my.
I'll show you everything.
Okay.
I'll get you set up because that's what I do. Is I help home growers learn how to grow because I target beginners, people that have never done this
Hmm.
before. Because I know a lot, but I'm not one of these people
Yeah.
whose legacy. I've never been to Humboldt. I never, been on a super
Oh, you
huge.
should. You would love it over there.
Huh?
You would love Humble.
Oh, well, I
You
plan to
should.
get out there. One of
Hmm.
my goals with Madman Plant is my version where I am actually traveling to
Hmm.
facilities to learn about different styles of cultivation. So that is on my
That's
list.
love.
So if
That's
you know
awesome.
anybody, I'll meet you there.
I have a few people there in Humble for sure that I
Let's
can.
go. I love California. Me and Honey have no problem.
Dope. Then
And
we'll have to plan it out.
and my bargaining chip is Honey. Honey will be there.
She's awesome.
Isn't Honey awesome? Honey,
Yes, yes.
you're gorgeous. You sleeping dog.
Oh, yeah. Sleeping Beauty.
Dude, she absolutely is a sleeping beauty. All right, well, before we head out, is there anything that we missed?
I think we checked all the boxes.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity again. So,
No, thank you for the panel. Last thing I do want to talk about is tell people about the panel. How did I do? What did you
hmm.
think? Everything.
The panel was amazing. I would say I love that you started with that speech, and well, we were looking at the painting. That was deep. That was very deep. I think it set the tone. Thank you for being vulnerable and telling your story and what that means. You did great. The panelists were great. We all were vibing and just going over our stories, which was pretty cool. I like the way you had that super the structure, came prepared with the questions, and they were all very relevant, and it was a good time. So appreciate it.
Well, I really appreciate that because I get to do that next month in June, and I need some real world feedback, and I actually put a
You
lot of
got it.
time into that, like probably like 4 to 6 hours, putting everything
Wow.
together. Because here, check this out. This is what I meant to bring to California, which is all laminated, which was I had this beautiful sign on the door to let people know that there was a live
Oh.
podcast in there. I had everything ready to
Mm-hmm.
go, and I even had look
Wow.
my
And
card.
you left.
You're on fire, pass the torch card.
Wow.
I know,
And you left it at home.
I did.
Ay, ay, ay.
Yeah, or you would
Well,
have been getting a
can use it for
laminated
the next one.
copy. Next year, I'm gonna put like, please enter podcast inside. Come in, something, something.
Mm-hmm.
But but yeah, no. Thank you for that wonderful compliment. I really appreciate that, and I really did
Yeah, it was
try
awesome.
hard.
You could see you put a lot of effort into it.
Well, is there anything else that we need to know about JM before we sign off?
No, just check out my website for more information about what I do, what I've been doing, what the future looks like is jmbalbuena.com.
And how about social media? Where can people subscribe, like,
For
comment?
sure. You can definitely follow my Instagram. That's where I'm the most active is at underscore JM Balbuena. And that's it. But I am on LinkedIn. I'm not as active. I'm on Twitter with the same JM Balbuena. For Twitter is JM Balbuena 13, so 13. And those are it. But thank you for the opportunity. Enjoy the rest of your night.
Yes.
Because I know it's already night. It's only 4:45 here.
Oh, it's about to be 8 o'clock here, so we're doing good.
Okay. Good, good.
Well, everybody, have a wonderful night. Thank you guys so much for being here, and we will see you guys real soon. Peace, yos.